Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I'm utterly delighted to be joined by Mike Powell from Rapid Addition. Mike, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you, Toby?
Really good, thanks. Really good. Listen, Rapid Addition is a company I've been following for a long time. You've been the CEO over there for a little while now. Some really interesting stuff that you guys are getting involved in at the moment, and an interesting time, full stop. But give us a little bit of background first and foremost about yourself, about the business, and where you are today.
Yeah, well, sure. Look, thanks very much. Probably like most people, stumbled into finance with no real intention to go there. I was very lucky to spend a year in Japan as part of my university studies, and Nomura kindly offered me a job in London after I graduated. So I kind of arrived in finance. My timing was perfect. I think the Nikkei then decided to jump off a cliff soon after joining. So my stay on the sales and trading desk was fairly short-lived. I did about 3 years there, but I ultimately fell onto the sort of data and technology side of the industry. And I think we first met when I was at Reuters back in the day, but I did a stint at Bloomberg before that, and then ended up long and fruitful career at Reuters and Thomson Reuters, and so left just before it became Refinitiv. So yeah, I kind of worked pretty broadly in that space. I ended up running global enterprise business at Refinitiv, which is all the feeds and technology side of the business. And all good things came to an end, and I joined Rapid Addition as CEO, as you said, just over a year ago now. So a little bit of change in pace, much smaller company, which is has its challenges and advantages, but yeah, having a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit about the Rapid Addition journey. So it's a business there that I think has probably been, I think sometimes described as a sort of a greatly kept secret, and massive value that's been added to it. Tell us a little bit about what brought you from that sort of background at a huge company into a business like this with so much opportunity in it. Tell us a little bit what you saw and what Rapid Addition are doing at the moment. Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, Rapid Addition has been around for quite a few years. I think originally it was founded in about 2003, and for a lot of that period, it was very much focused on just purely sort of fixed engine and consultancy around that. It was a relatively small firm, and kind of bumped along in that space. Kevin Houston, who you may know, is one of the kind of key guys at the original implementation of the fixed standard in financial services, and he'd got involved. He's currently our chairman, and he got involved a few years back and started to drive that. And then probably in about 2017, the company basically reinvented itself through a couple of small acquisitions that gave Rapid Addition some really interesting IP, and very much kind of transformed it much more into a platform technology company. So going from kind of purely fixed engine to a much broader enterprise platform play, asset class and protocol agnostic, along with the acquisition of some really exciting IP around FPGA. Kevin and Rapid Addition have been working on an R&D project on some FPGA technology as kind of market experts, and ended up lifting out the IP. So we kind of own our own TCP IP stack around FPGA, which is kind of interesting. And one of the opportunities around that is this kind of combination of hardware and software with the platform. With the core platform that we offer. So although they've been around a long time, it kind of got relaunched in, as I said, about 3-4 years ago. Kevin had been running it and looking for someone to come in and help him grow the business. And I've known him for over 10 years. We kind of worked together on various projects in the past, and he kindly asked me to come and join him in the journey. And for me, an interesting opportunity to take that experience from big company, and all the good things about big company. They're not all good things, but there are lots of good things. And I love the experience I'd had. I spent 7.5 years in Asia with Reuters, which was great. And I sort of worked in and ran different bits of the business, and kind of bring some of that benefit, but obviously into a much more sort of nimble, smaller organization. And I guess the thing I found was, and that was attractive, was great bunch of people, but super smart technology and technologists. Some really cool stuff they were doing, very innovative. Some really blue chip customers that they'd secured in some very interesting sort of workflow and use cases, but very technology focused, and probably, as you said, a little bit over kept secret. They weren't well known. I think being fairly open in my comment here, but I would say probably the kind of marketing side of the business wasn't functioning as it could be, and it just felt there was a bigger opportunity there for the company to kind of expand and grow. So really coming on board was to help in that and really trying to scale up the business, really.
Going to plan so far?
Yeah, it's going all right. There was this small thing called coronavirus that presented a few challenges, which I guess is true for everybody, and had nobody really planned for, and obviously I wasn't expecting, and that's kind of hit about 9 months after I joined. But it's been okay, to be honest. Our main centre of excellence for development is based out in Prague. We have a really good team out there. So the bulk of our team are based in Prague. Sales, marketing, finance, so on is in London, senior management, and then a couple of other smaller locations where we have sales footprint. So we were used to operating very much online anyway. So we're a big user of Microsoft Teams, and it was fairly routine daily to be spending time on instant messaging, on video links, etc., etc. So moving everyone to remote working, as we did pretty promptly back around mid-March, I guess. I was really pleasantly surprised that no one seemed to miss a beat. We kind of just got on with it, and everyone has functioned pretty well. So from an operational perspective, we were set up pretty well to do that. We have sort of secure remote working. The developers can access all their tools and stuff. So that's worked pretty well. From a business perspective, which I think probably resonates with a lot of people, that certainly ones I've spoken to, everything went very quiet for a couple of months while, clients and prospects were all trying to implement their home working policies and deal with the fallout from COVID. And, we probably had a few nervous looks at each other internally, thinking, what's happening is, everything's, is everyone dried up? What's going to happen next? But actually, a lot of the projects we're working on have come back on stream slowly, and we've accelerated a couple and closed some interesting deals. We're doing some good stuff down in South Africa, for instance, and there's a couple of big projects we're working on which are now very much alive, and we're kind of going into implementation phase. So that's been good. I think, like most people, I think the new stuff's harder. No one's doing face-to-face conferences at the moment for obvious reasons. So I think everyone's trying to reinvent that. So we spent a lot of time thinking about sales and marketing in this kind of more virtual world. How do we reach out to people? How do we help our existing customers better? Explore opportunities with them, and then how do we reach out through social media, emailing, direct selling, etc., and just look at a whole new mix of maybe how we go to market. And I think that's still evolving for us. I think it's still evolving for everybody.
Yeah, it's certainly. I think that's one of the interesting parts for me, because you're not alone in everything you just said there as well, and it's been a theme all the way through that people have definitely performed better than I think they would have done if they'd been thrown these circumstances and say, right, 6 months, this is what the world's going to be happening, and where everyone would be. You're ahead of certainly where you thought you would be in the circumstances. But I think this sales and marketing piece is fascinating, because gone's the physical events of the trade tech and the FPA FPL conference, and so in Europe, everything in between, and it's left this void of the face-to-face meeting, which is still probably yet to be filled in the way that we'd all want it to be. And I think at the start, no one wanted to sell. No one wanted to come in there and be that person who was pushing sales on people who didn't want to hear about selling at that sort of stage. Yeah. And this swing to marketing and has been something which we've spoken about a lot on this show over the last couple of months. Tell us a little bit about your sales philosophy, because This is an amazing sort of situation to be in, particularly so early into the stewardship of a business as you've been through. How have you dealt with that, and how have you created value to your customers and taken all that sort of side of things on as well?
Yeah, it is a great question, and I wouldn't pretend to have all the answers, but obviously, and that's kind of been evolving. But a lot of it's down to kind of communication, working with our existing customers. I think a lot of what we're trying to do in the philosophy of the company is very much kind of aimed around this sort of world where there's kind of more automation, more less friction in electronic trading. How do we kind of make processes easier? And that's starting to resonate. It was certainly resonating before, maybe for different reasons, such as sort of dealing with fragmented liquidity, dealing with margin compression, and the whole kind of cost pressure on trading technology departments, dealing with kind of increased regulation, changing market structure, and how do you more rapidly adapt to that? And I think one of the marketing campaigns we ran, were running just before COVID, was very much of what does the new electronic trading market look like post MiFID II? And there was structural changes that were starting to become more evident, and we saw growth in systematic internalization. You're seeing ongoing electronification across other asset classes. So that trend was there. You're kind of now in an environment where not only have you got that, you've also got teams that are much more remote working. There's things changing and happening in the markets, a lot of volatility in the markets. So how can you become more agile and move more quickly, which has always been a challenge, particularly for the larger financial organizations with big infrastructure deployments. And for very good reason, because making changes in is a bit like open heart surgery. I mean, markets are open, they're 24-hour markets, globally interconnected. It's not like closing the northern line down for 3 months and making repairs. You can't do that, right? So quite naturally the market is conservative. But what that means is it holds people back from being agile, from being responsive to clients, from entering new markets quickly. And there's kind of opportunity cost of being slow. But how do you balance that up against kind of the risk that you might drop the ball, or operationally, or you might have a compliance fine or something. So very much what we try and do is we kind of deploy a kind of core technology that enables people to be more efficient, move faster. And I think that's resonating in the current environment. And people do want to sort of think about this whole environment where, is everyone going to come back to work? Can you always get hold of the client? Can you take friction out of the whole process and operate in a more agile, being more agile, operate more at pace, reduce risk, and actually kind of supports where maybe the kind of workplace is going. I mean, we talk to clients all the time. We're talking to a lot of guys on trading tech IT who are saying, well, actually, it's an interesting discussion at the moment. Do I ever come back to the office? Do I work remotely going forward? And you can do that. You can do that with certain initiatives, certain projects, certain technology. Maybe some of the legacy things that's harder to do. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting debate. And actually, that when you mentioned there the marketing, you wrote a brilliant article recently for FPL, I know. And I think the sort of theme of where you're going hits probably some of the biggest board level conversations that are happening within the electronic markets, the trading technology markets, full stop. So proven technology, that sort of ability to to make sure you've got robust technical solutions that innovate and allow people to gain advantage. I'd like to talk about FPGA a little bit further on that in a bit as well. Cost reduction, obviously one of the big pieces which people are talking about at the moment, and speed, which has always been speed to market and allowing people more time, and that sort of agility that's created around that is absolutely what you guys and where you guys are positioned within that, which I think is fascinating. But those three things, when we look at companies who have succeeded and had a really strong 6 months, and there are so many companies there that have grown out there at the moment in this space, so many companies that have posted embarrassingly for some record performances during this sort of period, it usually comes down to those three things and how well people operate within it, right? What's your take on the current state of the electronic markets and where the advantage comes into it, and indeed how you guys are helping out with that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one, so I guess the angle we're coming at it from is slightly different. I mean, I think, typically, if you look historically, you kind of had this. If you're a customer, if you're a sell-side bank, or if you're a hedge fund or a trading desk at a big buy side, you kind of had this sort of option of sort of buy something that was maybe a bit producty and kind of little bit predefined and restrictive, or build what you really want internally, but there's high cost, resource requirements, time to market issues in doing that. You're kind of reinventing the wheel to a certain extent in many cases, but it's your wheel and how you want it to look, right? And that's great. But if you look at the last decade or so, I mean, we kind of came out the financial crisis in sort of 2008 onwards. We've then had just reams and reams of sort of new regulation, and the whole financial services industry has just been at max capacity on digesting and implementing response to regulation. And that's been a massive overhead on all sorts of financial organizations, particularly the sell side, that's restricted their ability to do other stuff. So just from a budgetary perspective, your non-discretionary budget is just, it's just taking up everything. As your discretionary budget's going to do innovative new things that help you win, is really limited. And basically, you're focused on de-risking the business, compliance and regulation, taking cost out of the business because market margins are crushed. And the whole kind of competing effectively and differentiating yourself has been really challenged. So I think there's been a big differentiation dilemma in the market from that perspective. And you've seen a lot of firms like white labeling technology from larger firms because it's more cost effective and given what we just talked about. But that means lots of people doing the same thing. So how do I win business, right? What we're trying to do is mix that up a little bit, as a bit of a corny strapline of sort of reinventing the kind of buy versus build dichotomy and saying, well, actually, what we try to do is provide this core platform technology, so high performance, highly scalable kind of messaging middleware, with a flexible development framework above it, whereby you're kind of getting the time to market and cost benefit of buying, but then you have this flexibility to inject your own business logic and differentiate the things that actually you're really good at as for instance a sell-side bank. So rather than messing around trying to transform various versions of fix or proprietary protocol and inject those into your various systems and make the whole thing interoperable, managing all the routing and messaging and so on. That's kind of a core capability. Everybody has to do it. So rather we provide that and then allow you the flexibility to define your own risk logic for risk filters, your own smart order routing logic, etc., whatever you want to kind of build on top of the platform. So that's very open. It's not black box. You define what you want to do with that. But we give you the framework. That means you can deploy that very quickly. You can test it very quickly. You can change it intraday. And we're now kind of getting to the next phase of that. You referred to that article I'd written for FPL, where what we quite like the look of this sort of actually pushing some of that back to the end client to give them more self-determination. So today, if I'm a buy-side firm dealing with my brokers, I have to request them to do stuff. It takes time. They've got to prioritize it on various, very long project lists of things they've got to do. If I can go in and do something simple myself, such as update symbol lists on my risk filter, because actually my mandate on one of my funds has changed, and now I can't trade these companies, but I can trade these companies, rather than having to ask someone to do that for me and go through this whole kind of process. I can do that myself. And we see a world where we can keep evolving that. And one of the key areas that we think there's still a lot of friction in the market is the whole onboarding process. So putting aside the whole KYC kind of aspects of it, but once you actually get just the technical onboarding of clients, the conformance testing, the even stupid things like making sure currency symbols are compatible on both sides of the trade and both counterparties. Taking friction out of that and making that a much smoother process, and almost automating that process, is kind of one of the things that we're very focused on. So it's kind of broad what we do, because we have this kind of core messaging platform, and we can adapt it to different parts of the electronic trading workflow. But a lot of that is just how do we make things more efficient? How do we make organizations more agile, free up resources? There's definitely a sort of cost aspect to that, but at the same time de-risk it. So a lot of the development in there, we did a big platform release back at the just in time for COVID at the end of Q1. So at least I had something to write about from a marketing perspective. And a lot of the design on that is really around how do you more efficiently manage and control complex deployed trading infrastructure. So things like full integration with Git. So all your versioning management is kind of automated, which means it's great for compliance, particularly things like MiFID, where you have to show audit trails of technology changes in your trading infrastructure. But actually the ability to do sort of auto rollback. So if you have done all your testing, everything, you roll something into production, but there's something that didn't get picked up or some anomaly, you can instantly roll back to exactly the prior configuration and make that very seamless process. Things like creating, the platform has a virtual environment, so allows you to run thousands of automated tests that you can configure based on historical data that we've captured, or you can put in your own scenarios. But you can run all of these tests in this virtual environment to make sure the behavior of anything that you've changed is as it should be. And again, you're not picking up any anomalies or things that you should go back and kind of refactor into your software pipeline before you deploy it into production. So all of these things are kind of designed just to make people go faster, be more agile, be more responsive. And hopefully that's kind of resonating both from the perspective of the world is all asset classes are becoming a lot more electronic now. Obviously, exchange traded have for a long while, but we think they're in that sort of second phase now of maturity. But then you've got sort of FX, fixed income, other asset classes that are increasingly kind of automating as well. And then on top of that, you've got this, sort of maybe the new environment, shall we say, that you work in, which is can you make processes more seamless, and therefore kind of better in this kind of remote working or dispersed team type environment that we have now.
And that all sort of ties into the fact that we're in such a rapid phase of evolution in everything, and volatility, and all of these sort of colliding worlds at the moment that make it such an interesting marketplace. And I think what you're talking about there is providing bespoke and tailored solutions that allow themselves to be adapted to the real problems of each individual client. And I think so often my frustration with the fintech space, and particularly around capital markets and trading technology and such like, has been it's been this is our solution and we're solving a problem, and sort of tail wagging dog almost in telling them what the problem is. The companies that I've seen really adapt and really go strongly over the last few years are those who've looked at genuine problems as opposed to sort of here's a problem which we can solve, and are providing solutions that absolutely allow people to do everything you've just spoken about, the efficiency, the making it easier. That's the strapline, isn't it? How is your product, how is your technology going to come in there and make life easier for real-time problems that are growing in their complexity and their regulation and everything around that? And the companies that get that right seem to me to have the magic ingredient, and something which you're obviously spending a lot of time on at the moment, right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I've been around this space a long time on sort of vendor and technology and data side, and more years than I care to remember, probably. And I think the challenge is I see lots of great ideas. I spent a little bit of time in more kind of real pure fintech just before I joined Rapid Edition. So I was doing some mentoring and on a couple of advisory boards for firms up on the Barclays Rise fintech program up in Shoreditch, which was a lot of fun, very interesting. I felt very old, and what I thought
overdressed, I imagine, as well, right?
Yeah, what I thought was dressed down. People saying, you're going shooting for the weekend, Michael. But I think that a lot of what I see, I think unfortunately it's kind of people are hitting quite niche solutions, or kind of like, the challenge in the current environment, if you're a bank or a broker or buy side, it's I run a very complex, multifaceted world. What can you tell me it's actually going to make a tangible difference? It's going to be meaningful. So you look at your own life, like I'm sure we could all shave a few quid off our utility bills, our internet provider, etc. But in the greater scheme of our life, much as I don't particularly want to waste that money, I've got so many different things coming at me from sort of work, family, social, whatever, that it's like, okay, I can live with that. That's not a priority. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of fintech solutions kind of fall in that space where it's like, nice idea. I know we could be doing that better, but does it really change my world when I'm kind of facing the perfect storm of COVID and regulation and volatile markets, and potentially at some point our lending book's going to blow up when firms start going. But if I'm a C-suite at a bank at the moment, it's a challenging environment. So I think it has to be meaningful, has to be big problems, and that can be challenging, right? And I think trying to work with clients, trying to understand their business, trying to develop those relationships where you can get insight to that is important, and understanding what their priorities are. Our slight challenge is that because our kind of core because ultimately it's a high performance messaging platform and translation layer with this flexible development framework on top, you could kind of point it at many different workflows within financial services. So and indeed we have, we do FX price dissemination, we do DMA connectivity, we do order routing, we do all pre-trade risk, etc. Lots of different scenarios you can use the tech. It's hard kind of marketing that. Oh yeah, we can do anything. Okay. So I think we try to pick areas where there's something that's resonating at the moment, where people have got challenges, and kind of carve the story out. I think selling enterprise software is quite tough, because it sounds great at a CTO level, but as you go further down the business, it's like I'm head of fixed income trading. Why do I care about an enterprise solution? I've got this problem in front of me. I need to fix that. So how can you sort of tell the CTO, CIO the big picture story, but then have that kind of that deep vertical solution for how you're going to improve the world of head of fixed income trading, for instance. So I think it's a lot around dialogue. It's a lot around having the right people in your organization who've got the expertise to not just be product sales guys, but actually have the confidence to get into a conversation with clients and extract those real pain points, and become, it's a bit of a 90s cliche, but there's a very good book called The Trusted Advisor, right? It was an old sales book, but it resonates still. It's I've
got it literally behind the screen over here.
I think it's on my shelf behind me. Right? but I think the whole philosophy of just don't turn up and shove product down someone's throat. Actually, engage in demonstrate how you can add value to their world, and we work very hard at that. And we have some great guys in the tech team who are ex-investment banks, trading technology guys, and kind of really understand the workflow, and therefore understand where the pain points are in that. But that evolves over time, so you've got to have that live conversation with your clients.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really because there's that opens up a whole ream of debate, and I know we're running out of time, but there's things there which you talk about, solution sales in particular around there, about how you can provide solutions that create challenges as well, because yours is a business that in times like this, where there are so many different solutions, can lead to a strategy of sort of lurching from one expedient to the next. It smacks of the opportunity to pivot one way and another way and another way, and sort of lose that core message of value where you're at. What I think you guys are doing pretty well at the moment is saying, look, let's understand that the genuine problems and provide solutions that are based in our remit for that. And I think that's brilliant. Before we do sign off, there's one area that I mentioned it before that I wanted to still go into, because I'm fascinated about the whole FPGA rise and fall, which happens at various different phases. And over the last 5 to 10 years, I think we've seen sort of many dawns of it's too expensive. It's actually it's now incredibly adds incredible value to, and it's been one of those sort of tech areas that always seems like it should be breaking through and becoming more mainstream, but sort of has its sort of spurts through these sort of areas to do it. Where's your take on the future of FPGA and where it can add value?
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. I saw that a lot from the market data side. I mean, obviously, so I ran all the kind of electron and feed stuff at Thomson Reuters, and we had a whole kind of direct feed suite as well, and we competed with Wombat back in the day before it got acquired, and that kind of iterated onwards. And it's a difficult one, because I think initially, if you think kind of pre the credit crisis, when you had a lot of prop trading desks within the sell side, and you had this whole kind of growth of HFT, and a lot of that's been arbed out of the market now. So people can't run prop desks anymore, thanks to a lot of the regulation that came out post credit crisis. And a lot of the HFT stuff's kind of being found out a little bit, and there's not the opportunities quite that there were. So there are, but those guys, they were looking very much at FPGA. The problem, it's quite a fragmented market, because if you're really pure FPGA, you can't afford to buy what everyone else is buying. You got to do something unique, because the whole point of your model is you're supposed to be faster than everyone else, right? I remember having that debate with a guy from GetCo on a panel once, and the guy said, well, why don't you just buy the stuff from Thomson Reuters? He goes, well, look, they do great stuff, but if I'm supposed to be faster than everyone else and they're selling to everyone else, how does that work? But I'm actually building something different. I'm building a stripped down go-kart. They're building, a saloon car, whatever the analogy was. But so you kind of got quite a niche aspect to it. But as a core underlying technology, it certainly has its place. Where we predominantly deployed at the moment is very much around DMA risk filters, so inline risk filters, so you can run the risk checks as fast as you physically can, because it has latency to the trading process. One of the other things that stopped the early adoption of FPGA was sort of the challenge of programming on FPGA, right? It was more complex, it was hard to do, there's less guys around that could do that. So what we've done, we've actually integrated our hardware and software development team. So they kind of sit together in Prague, they kind of work together, and very much the idea is that the interoperability between the core software platform and the FPGA hardware we can inject into that, where we need that kind of level of latency performance for people. So and what that means is both in terms of designing a risk filter in the software and injecting into the FPGA, but also where you've got more sophisticated sort of risk parameters you want to put in that actually would slow down the FPGA, that you might want to deploy that in the software. And so you kind of got these things that kind of more symbiotic and work side by side. So I think rather than looking at it and/or, we look at it kind of part as, right? So it's kind of you have the core platform software, but you have the ability to kind of layer in the FPGA on top of that. We don't sell it as like a standalone separate bit of the business, right? So I think the world's making more progress. We're speaking quite a lot to Microsoft recently around some of the things they're doing around that space, in terms of data center efficiency and performance for the whole kind of cloud side of it. So I think it still has a big role, and latency. Yeah, I think it's still there's in in the right circumstances where people are facilitating DMA or naked access, some of the exchanges still allow you to do that. It has a role. It's relatively specialised, but I think the challenge with that space, as I said, is making it, if you're a standalone FPGA kind of offering, it's a little bit fragmented, that market, and so I think making it easy to use, making it interoperable, that's kind of our philosophy and kind of where we're trying to take it at the moment.
So exciting stuff still remains within it. There was a massive race around latency, wasn't there? And I guess it's still there. It's still the trading advantage, right? But it's that was dominating every sort of conversation I was having a few years ago, and I think it's
I think the flip is yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I think the flip is more. It's kind of gone from differentiator to a little bit more table stakes now. I think the whole market is just operates so much faster. But it still tends to be the sort of exchange traded, cash and derivatives space. We're seeing it less elsewhere. So maybe that's an area for development, perhaps in the more kind of liquid asset classes like FX, for instance.
Yeah.
We're kind of looking at various areas where we can scale that business at the moment, but it's to
watch this space.
Yeah, hope so.
But Mike, there is. I feel like I could have another hour talking through loads of this stuff, and I've got loads more. So maybe we'll get you back on the show in the not too distant, and we can see how things are coming through. But I'm conscious of your time, and I'm also really keen for people to be reaching out to you and finding out a little bit more about Rapid Edition as well. Tell us two things: who should be talking to you at the moment, who you'd love to hear from, and tell us how they can get in touch with you.
Look, we'd like to speak to anybody. I think we're both on the business side and the technology side, right? So I think the big change going forward is what we've seen is technology and the business kind of much more kind of closely aligned these days. So so I think anyone involved in front office trading technology, anyone from kind of onboarding teams who are struggling with kind of client connectivity issues. Looking at how they get to the clients, both in terms of things like price dissemination. So pretty much any part of the electronic trading workflow where they've got challenging around managing messaging, managing message volume, and so on, translation, we'd be delighted to talk to people. And obviously, I'd be more than happy for anyone to reach out directly to me, and you can find my details on LinkedIn. Or just go to our website, rapidedition.com, and that's got a little inquiries form, and we'll get straight back to you if you'd like a chat, and we'd be very, very happy to speak to you.
Well, it'll always be a good chat, I'm sure of that as well. And I mean that. Let's do a follow up to this in Q4 and see how things are progressing and everything that you've been evolving with as well and moving through it all. Q4 actually not far off us, and now either is it. So as we zoom through the year, but Mike, look, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, and glad to hear that the navigation through these seas is going so well for you guys, and brilliant work. Look, I think there's so much value that you guys are adding in exactly the right sort of space at the moment. So keep up the good work, and thanks for joining us today.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Toby. Much appreciated.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.